So, I think, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Acoustics are pretty good, so you're all incredibly welcome. It's just been amazing. I've kind of dropped in and out of some of the pitches. To think that there's a hardware hackathon happening in Dublin when 4 years ago there wasn't, I don't know even if there was a hackathon happening in Dublin, and to have so many teams presenting so many incredible kind of ideas, not just ideas, but pretty much like fully formed concepts in many cases is it's just incredible. From talking to the guys that have put the event together today, there's kind of 100 people here from all over the country. There was a long waiting list, and it's, I don't know, I just kind of get excited when I see something like this starting, and I just wonder where it's going to be, you know, in a number of years' time. So we're joined on stage by four really kind of fascinating individuals that all play a part in a different element of the ecosystem. And I think they've got some incredible insights that I'm looking forward to hearing. So I'm going to start to my left by introducing Liam Casey. So Liam is the CEO and founder of a pretty extraordinary company called PCH. And I think that I could say confidently that there isn't a person in this room that doesn't perhaps own a product right now sitting in either their bag or in their pockets that hasn't passed through one of his factories or facilities in China. And he's also opened up something pretty incredible in San Francisco that I'm sure he'll tell us a little bit about. So that's your first panelist. I'm going to turn to Liam in a few moments for some of the kind of first questions. Our next panelist to my left is Philip Moyna from Intel. He's the VP of Internet of Things. And what's happened in Intel in Ireland over the last number of years is pretty spectacular as compared to what's happened over the previous number of decades. And he's going to share some of that stuff with you. Then to my right is Will Prendergast. This is great. So to my right is Will Prendergast from Frontline Ventures, which is a new venture firm or VC firm that's been set up in Dublin. And 4 years ago, never to say a bad word about any investors in Ireland, but 4 years ago, it was basically fuck all good investors in Dublin, and they were painful accountants who just didn't understand what the hell software was, but they were supposed to invest somebody's money. And it was a terrible experience. And to have Will and his two other partners kind of leading a charge in Dublin forces all these other guys in the ecosystem to kind of up their game, and I think it's a great thing for the ecosystem. And then to our final panelist is Ben Harris, who's the founder and CEO of a company called Drop, and I'm sure he'll share with you the quite incredible product that he's behind and that he's designed. It's just an incredibly beautifully designed and simple product. So it's an amazing group, and I think we're very lucky to have them with us. So I'd love to turn to you first, Liam, and just ask, hardware seems to be going through some sort of renaissance, certainly in Silicon Valley where I was during the week, and I'm just wondering, is that happening in Ireland?
I'm delighted to be here.
Delighted to be here, and yes, there is a hardware renaissance, and there's a prototyping renaissance, as we've seen here this weekend. There isn't a manufacturing renaissance yet, but we're working on that. And again, one of the things that we see is when you look at an event like this here in Dublin this weekend, when we look at running similar events around the world, whether we do it in San Francisco, we do it in Asia, you're going to get very similar energy which comes with it, right? And what we do as a company is we try to bring down the barriers for people with an idea for a product. And a great example is Ben here at the end with Drop. About a year ago, Ben joined Hybrid One, which is our incubator based in San Francisco, and today we're in production of the Drop product, which will be shipping very soon. And that's a company based in Ireland. So the ideas you've seen just pitched here, there's no reason why, if there's a market for any of those products, that these teams can become companies, and they actually can come up with a business model to actually build the products and ship them anywhere in the world. We have a saying in the company, in business today, geography is history. So you have the very same opportunity here as anybody has in Silicon Valley, where you have an idea for a product, you can actually bring it to market in the same process that a company or a startup would do in Silicon Valley. So we're excited by it. What we look for, and what I personally look for when I see all of the pitches for ideas, the first thing I look for is the team and the entrepreneurs, because that's the most important thing. Because in any startup, whether it's a software company or a hardware company or any kind of company, it's the perseverance of the entrepreneurs and the team is what's actually going to make the difference. And that's what we're always looking for.
And just one other question, compared to Silicon Valley, how does the kind of atmosphere here today compare in your view?
I mean, the energy here is the very same as a hardware hackathon anywhere in the world is the same, because you see the energy. And what we like about it as opposed to a software hackathon is actually you have people working with physical products. They're building samples. Today you have access to Galileo, you've got Arduino, you've got Raspberry Pi in the board side, you've got Linux, you've got Android, you've got the software, and you also have 3D printers. This weekend you've seen them all put to work here. They're the universal tools for building hardware prototypes today. So the energy, and it's amazing what's possible, and when people see the prototypes coming together, that's what creates that whole buzz and environment. We're thrilled to be here with DCU, and I think that Reen and the team here need a lot of credit for what they're doing. I'm excited about the fact that they're looking at bringing a tech shop here. I think that those tools would actually be really helpful to enhance what's already here, and it would create a great opportunity for more people to actually get involved.
Great, thank you, Liam. So, Philip, growing up in Ireland, you couldn't but know that Intel arrived here at some point, what seems like a very long time ago, and for the most of their time in Ireland, they've just manufactured things. But something's changed in the last few years, in a large part because of you, and I'd love you to kind of share with the audience some of the stuff that's happening today in Intel in Ireland.
Sure, I'll start with the clarification. It has little to do with me. It has to do with, if there's one piece of advice I have at the front end, is just hang out with really smart people, because great shit gets done. There's 25 years actually this year is the time we've had in Ireland, and in the last 1,000 days, Intel spent 5 million a day, so 5 billion in 3 years at a rate of 5 million per day for 1,000 days. So the stuff that goes on out there in this extraordinary manufacturing machine has been important for Ireland Inc., and it's been important for Intel. But you're right that there's been a change in focus for us over the last couple of years, and the kind of way that plays out, if you look at Intel's business, so we've got lots of small, medium, and large businesses. Intel falls in that latter category. Revenue is a bit north of $1 billion a week. Profits a bit north of $1 billion a month. So it's a big business, but it has three kind of core categories. There's the cloud. So when you ask your phone a question, or the returned answer comes from some Intel silicon in the cloud. So that's a good business versus the PC stuff we're known for. There's tablets and phones. And now, with all of us here, focus on this new category, the Internet of Things. And what's kind of cool for us is that the silicon and the software stack that feeds IoT is entirely out of here. It's come out of smart Irish people in a smart Irish company, and it couldn't have happened without that baseline of high-tech manufacturing. But we are deeply proud of it. There's a lot of very smart people out there, and created the two big things are a piece of silicon called Quark. So any shots at where the word Quark came from?
James Joyce.
You can only see outside of Ireland people don't get it, but it's our own little inside joke. We had a family of products called Atom, and we wanted a new family that kind of reflected that. So Quark was, thank you James Joyce, was the word we went after. So for most of the planet, it's a subatom form of matter or energy, and for us it's James Joyce. So the Quark product family is designed end-to-end in Ireland, and then we what got more coverage was a thing called Galileo, which is a development board that we put it on, which is a partnership with Arduino, but again entirely designed in Ireland. So that's the twist, Paddy. And IoT has arrived. It's been around for a long time, but what's happening is it's tipping. So when you look at go back 20 years, Liam and I didn't get the chance to grow up in this territory, but we had to do 6 years of study to get the computer to say hello world back to us, right? That's the world we grew up in. You guys grow up in a world where there's some drag and drop and you don't do anything as dull as a screen saying hello world. You get something amazing to happen on a screen. So there's been this extraordinary lowering of the barrier between an idea and delivery of a product in the software world. And there's been an extraordinary lowering of the barrier between that product and a market. Right? My 14-year-old son loads it to a worldwide market on an app store. I mean, how cool is that? Or he sends his stuff to his friends through Facebook sharing. So the energy barriers in software have dropped between the idea, the product, and the market. And we've watched that happen over the last 20 years. Well, what's happening now is the equivalent in the physical world. So cool though the digital world is, and I've made my career out of it, it's a multi-trillion-dollar business that didn't exist not that long ago. And cool though it is, it's just the front end of something really incredible where you connect everything to the internet, not just every screen to the internet. And the energy barrier between your idea and a product or service can now be done in a hackathon over a weekend. All you need is smart people and good ideas. And then you got to bring it to market through the likes of an Intel or a PCH, or different paths to market for that thing. So bring it on, folks. It's an extraordinary window.
Great, thank you. Will, I'm going to skip you, and I want to go to Ben. Ben, I'd love you to just share. These guys maybe don't know the product that you're behind. I'd love you to just tell us what the product is, and take us through the journey that you've been on. I mean, you started out in many ways like many of these guys here. But did you ever participate in a hackathon, hardware hackathon?
Unfortunately, we never got the chance to jump into a hardware hackathon like this, and I really wish we had that opportunity in and around 2 years ago when me and the rest of the co-founders started working together. We're a team of creative technologists and designers who have a real love of great food. We've been interested in the kitchen space for years as well. When I was younger, I developed like a perfect egg boiler that could make eggs as easy as using a toaster, and my whole family and everyone's family has a real connection with the food industry as well. So we together developed an interactive recipe platform and a pipeline of products that talk to it. So we've got a team of bakers here in Dublin, over in San Francisco, and chefs as well, and in New York as well, who are starting to populate our new platform with recipes. And now we've got a pipeline of products that talk to it that you can start to interact with. So the very first one is Drop, which is an iPad connected kitchen scale that can walk you through making any recipe. You can scale any recipe to the amount of eggs you've got left in your cupboard. But we've really focused on making it as simple as possible and as intuitive as possible and as beautiful a design as possible. That's something that we've really focused on from the get-go. I think design was so important. So yeah, as Liam was saying earlier, it was we met him first about a year ago, where we showed him our pipeline of products, and I think at that stage Highway 1 was more of a twinkle in his eye. And but the second we mentioned that we were making connected devices, his ears pricked up, and he said, you know, Liam said he'd give us 20 minutes of his time that morning, and ended up staying with us for almost 2.5 hours and talking through what are the next steps, where can we go from here. And then we went on to Highway 1, the company accelerator based out of both San Francisco and Shenzhen. And being plugged into the network of people over there gave us a huge boost and really catapulted us to a stage now where we've got 10,000 units on the line at the minute that we're going to be shipping in the next couple of months. So we're at a super exciting stage in the company right now.
If I could just ask another question before moving to Will. Having seen a lot of the presentations and I met a lot of the guys here today, you know, they're starting out at a point that you started out not so long ago. What would be your kind of, you know, your recommendations to them?
Jump in with 2 feet and just really believe in your idea. Iterate quickly and get it out there as fast as possible. Get as much user input as you can, and you know, don't take everything on board. You know, you've got to take everything with a little bit of a pinch of salt and sort of filter what the important things to take on are, and what are the things that are too much of a leap. I think one of the most important things is starting to draw a line in the sand of like what you want to include in version 1, and then just, besides the fact of definitely applying for Highway 1, move on to some sort of accelerator and move on from there, and just get product built and get it tested.
Great, thanks, Ben. So Will, are you investing in hardware? Good question.
I got the mic down. That was that qualifier. So we, as Paddy was saying, we set up a fund about 2 years ago, and the basis for that fund is that we were only going to invest in software companies, and that still is our thesis basically. But the underlying reasons for that it was based on the capital productivity of what was happening in startups. And it's only in the last probably 6 months that through our experience, we're an investor in Drop. Through our experience with that and seeing what is now happening in the hardware space, we're now looking at that and saying, what has happened in software a few years ago that led us to do this with Frontline may lead us to do something else with hardware in the foreseeable future. So, on the capital productivity side with software, it was, Amazon and App Store if you were consumer, and SaaS if you were enterprise. Prototyping here has changed. I think the one area for me still on hardware that I'm trying to get my head around is the distribution into the enterprise rather than distribution into consumer. So I think there'll be some interesting innovation in that in the next coming years.
And is there, I won't grab the mic, but is there any particular space in hardware aside from just like what you've talked to, but is there any particular kind of vertical that's got you excited?
Yeah, I think VCs tend to be less thematic driven than they might want people to believe. It really comes down to the people and that they meet and whether they're passionate. If you look at where the money has gone, a lot of it has gone into a lot of the stuff around entertainment, so video, audio, some notable big checks there in terms of the Oculus. But there's also a lot of stuff in home automation, wearables. So there's categories being created that didn't previously exist. So I'm not even sure people know what the categories are yet.
Okay. So Liam, I'm just kind of wondering. This is your first hackathon, and I presume you're going to do more in Ireland. How important do you think hackathons ultimately are, especially in the context of Ireland? I mean, is there a substantial opportunity in Ireland right now, in your view? I mean, Intel are obviously doing something that's a monstrous global company, but I'm just wondering more generally, coming back here from Silicon Valley and China almost every few weeks, what are you seeing, and what's kind of, how big an opportunity do you think there is right now in Ireland?
There was as big an opportunity here as there is anywhere else in the world. I mean, as I said, the energy we see here this weekend is the same as the energy you will see, or similar to the energy you will see anywhere else. And to Will's point, distribution is, to me, because it's, when you come up with an idea for a product, if you can imagine it, it can be made. That's one thing which we've been working very clearly on. But sometimes the challenge has been to sell it, and one of the most important pieces of advice we give to the startups when they go through the process, especially at Highway 1 and PCH Access, we tell them to be very careful of the sales channel, because if you sign up big contracts with any of the retailers or the e-commerce companies, the working capital required through traditional distribution, there's no way you can convince investors like Will to invest in your company, because the capital required to fill the channels with inventory is huge. So the big thing that we're focused on is how do we disrupt that, and how do we actually create a very lean distribution in a very short time to market. We're doing it with some of our retail partners where we're shipping direct to store. We've one company where we've shipped in the last, just started a program with Radio Shack where we're shipping direct to their retail stores in the last 2 months, where we've actually shipped to 4,200 stores, 4,100 stores, and we're doing it. It used to take 3 months for them to get a product from production line to a store. We've brought it down to, on average, 5.5 days. Now the savings there for them in working capital is huge, and for them as a company, working capital is important at the moment. But So it's distribution. At the end of the day, we'll often say that our customers, we often say that, we win and lose on the back streets of China, and our customers win and lose on the high streets in the US. And Ben and the team at Drop can come up with a great product, and a fantastic product, because it is great. But if you can't sell it, then you ain't going anywhere. And one of the things that we put a huge focus on our startups, especially at Highway 1, is their pitch, is their ability to sell. And it's something that I actually see that's improving quite a lot from when we take some graduates and interns into PCH in China or in the US, we take them from Stanford University, we take them from different universities here. We had some interns in this year from UCC in Cork, and one guy in particular was in China, and I was watching how he compared to some of the guys coming out of Stanford a couple of years ago. The ability to sell and present wouldn't have been as strong. We're thrilled to see that that's improving. And I think for any of the universities, I think that is the ability to sell. And for Ireland, I think it's so important. You've got to be able to go out and sell. You win and lose on the high streets, and that's, any business. That's so important. And I think that's what I look for. It's great to see the demos, and it's great to see the products, and it's fantastic. They come in on Friday night, they leave here tonight, and you'll see working prototypes. But it's down to the ability to articulate the story. That's so important. And that's what excites me, because I think here in Ireland, I think we can really do it. We're great storytellers, and I think that gives us a huge advantage. You should see these guys, Ben and the team, and their ability to charm is fantastic.
Just to add a little to that, there's something that the planet knows Ireland's good at, and that's talking. And there's no real substitute for that piece. You've got to have the right idea. I'll pick on one of the pitches this weekend, and please excuse the terminology here, but it was just too good not to share. And that was, it was themed, let's get our shit together. And it was about the business opportunity from sewage treatment in Ireland. Now, it's not the most elegant idea you'll ever come across, but it's a real business idea. There's requirement to monitor, there's a requirement to spend resources on it, and there's an opportunity to connect those things called sewers to the internet so that you can bring the cost and effectiveness of monitoring it down. There are no ideas that are bad, and that was a particularly cool one, framed in a way that was compelling. People drifted to it because it was told as a good, cool story. And there's the STEM. We talk a lot about science, technology, engineering, and maths, and there's an A been added to it in some circles now, STEAM, and the A is arts, because it's the idea and the presentation of those ideas is not a substitute for the S, the T, the E, and the M. It's an augmenter, but it's a really important augmentation of it. We have more Nobel Prize laureates for literature in this country because we talk a lot of shite, and because we didn't respect the rules of the English language, and because you can write a chapter of a book that doesn't have any alliteration. Bring it on. That's the attitude you need to bring to your new businesses.
Fantastic. I think on that point, Will, I'm just wondering, take me through the process of pitching you guys. What does a good, well thought out pitch look like? Take me through the kind of the optimal journey that you like to travel along with a potential entrepreneur or startup before you sign a big check for them. I'm going to take notes here.
I guess a bit like your experience with Lean, everything begins with something that you imagine is going to be 20 minutes long, because you see, we probably see about 1,000 ideas a year, 1,000 businesses, and it does come back to, in the first instance, does that team or group of people just grab your attention? Are they passionate about something? Those are kind of essentially table stakes to get to the next stage. Even then, you can have a really passionate team that just is in the market that you think is too small, and a lot of people fall at that hurdle. So if you've got past the stage of you have a kind of a compelling team in a big market, you're pretty far down the tracks already, but it's pretty hard to get both of those. In the hardware space, certainly, product is immensely important. As we see businesses developing in this area, it tends to be, hero product, just great user experience, great design, and then quite quickly people need the ability to turn that into a platform. So, as Ben described his company earlier, he didn't say we have a kitchen scales, which is one of their first products. He was talking about a platform of products that enable people to, have a connected kitchen. And essentially people need to go from one to the other pretty quickly. So it's people who are kind of thinking about 3 or 4 steps down the track, and as you talk to them and ask them questions, the more you ask, the more you realise that they've thought this through.
Great. Ben, do you have anything to add, having gone through the process?
Yeah. Like we had been focusing on what our vision was for so long, and we needed to make sure that we had all those ducks in a row ourselves, and it was just essentially just making sure we had the right way to communicate that at the same stage. I think earlier on when we were talking to people, we were very focused on the first product because that's what we were working on at the time, but we knew we had so many things that were further down the line that we could jump into, that we were super excited about, and that we had chatted about amongst ourselves over a couple of pints essentially at home, but we weren't communicating that early, and I think that's a really important thing to almost like jot them down, get them out there, and make sure people understand that you are just looking way further beyond just the singular well-designed product, but the whole platform and the whole pipeline and what the long-term vision is, and that's where we're moving at the minute, which is the whole taking over the whole kitchen start to finish.
Great. So
Liam, I'm going to have a last question for you in a moment. We're quite tight on time. I'm just wondering, are there any questions from the floor? I know it's been a pretty long day, and some people have been sitting in here for about 3 hours.
Is there any plans for a Highway 2?
Plans for Highway 2. So Highway 1 has been a great success, and we've been, we're on class 3, just started 2 weeks ago. We're really excited about where it can go. The model for us is that in Highway 1, people go through the program. We pick from that where companies will graduate, and then we bring them into our PCH Access, is where we scale them into companies like Drop. We're not focused on just adding more Highway 1s. We're focused on finding great companies to bring through PCH Access to scale, and we'll take them from any of the incubators that are out there. RGA in New York we work with. We're looking at Bolton's in Boston. There's Accelerator in China. So there's plenty other incubators out there. Will we open another one? Potentially. For us though, it's about how do we get the volume of companies, and the idea is this step here, a hackathon here, is the very first step, because what that does, it kind of generates an interest in hardware, and it's a very important step. Once that happens, you then get people because at the end of the day, you will have people will leave here and they'll have an idea, and some people's interest will be tweaked, and they'll be thinking, what next? We would tell them to enter into an incubator or an accelerator, and we would be watching them, because we'd hope that they'd one day come through into our PCH Access, where we can help them scale and sell. So, not at this moment, but we're always thinking.
Great. Does it go ahead?
You're saying that passion in the team is really good, but market validation of your product is equally important, and that's something to get. That's something that's really, really necessary for any hardware product. Would you have any advice on that, or what VCs look for market validation?
Yeah, it's more market size, I guess, than market validation in the when you're first meeting. To give maybe just some data points on market validation. A lot of the the crowdfunding campaigns through Kickstarter and Indiegogo, VCs have used those as validation, particularly where it's a new product category. There's no direct correlation between success on those and VC funding. In fact, they're not correlated, but that's certainly one way of doing it. Interaction with some of the retail channel that is going to be the ultimate buyer of it. That's another source, but probably VCs who are interested in this space will just say, is that market big enough? Like if you're looking at the Oculus, how would you say that, how would you validate that market in the early stages? You just say, that could be huge if it comes through, and people will take a bet anyway, but yeah.
Great. So then, Liam. Oh, one final question.
Just got a question for Ben. First of all, congratulations on the launch there. Why did you decide to refine it, the market on concentrate on baking as opposed to general cooking?
As I was saying earlier, I think it's very important to draw a line in the sand of what you want to create first, with the long-term vision further down the road at the same time, and it's making sure that you bite off enough to chew that you can make sure you can get to market early, but then that there's enough in that bite to expand and as a stepping stone onto the next product. And we think there's, they say cooking is an art, but baking is a science. That's why it's so important to get the proportion between ingredients correct. And then at the same time, the baking community online right now are such a vocal community. And because there's actually a huge social aspect to our product and our platform as well, they're the perfect community to go through to help spread the word about Drop and what you can do with it as well. Because we're not just focused on baking as well. We've got, we're doing soups and sauces, different meals as well. So it's just, but baking is just the first vertical we're going after, and then moving beyond that. No worries, sure.
Can I just say something really quick, Paddy? It's been an amazing weekend, and I think just with what's happening with Tech Shop, possibly moving to this campus, and I think Liam should go in with this highway fascinating. And that would be a great opportunity there because it's creating an amazing ecosystem. And also talking to Trinity and UCB as well, their innovation academy, and feeding it through that, and then actually doing the prototype in the tech shop. So I think this is an amazing opportunity, and then of course you can feature all your stuff with some of the members.
That works perfectly. So are we going to see a lot more designed in Ireland coming out of Intel?
Yes.
Yes, right. Liam, you've kind of weaved my final question. Actually, almost, I guess you kind of answered in your last answer. I'm just wondering, and maybe you feel you cover this, but what can Ireland do to really position ourselves at the centre of this kind of movement in hardware?
I think that it takes time, but I mean things are moving much quicker than in the past. And I think that the work that DCU are doing here, the work that Tyndall are doing in Cork and Intel, I think that you're seeing that the barriers are coming down much faster than in the past, and momentum is gathering. I think that we need to see successes. We need to see more companies like Drop, because that's what, at the end of the day, that's where the rubber hits the road, and that's where you see commerce and business. And I think that's number one. It's as we see companies like Drop being more successful, I think that's where the opportunities are. And I think that you will see more companies coming out of Ireland in this space. So it's an exciting time.
Great. So please put your hands together for our wonderful panelists.